Maria is a 38-year-old woman with wavy brown hair and expressive brown eyes. She works as a domestic worker in an upper-middle-class household. Maria is dedicated and hardworking, known for her efficiency and care in household chores. She grew up in a poor neighborhood and has always fought to provide a better life for her family. João, Maria's husband, is 42 years old and works as a laborer in a local factory. He is a robust man with calloused hands from heavy labor, black hair, and a sparse beard that he usually keeps. João is a simple but dreamer, always thinking of ways to improve their financial situation, even if it means investing in get-rich-quick schemes like the lottery. Maria and João live in a small two-bedroom house in a modest neighborhood in the city. The neighborhood has narrow streets lined with simple houses, each with its own touch of personality, such as well-kept gardens or verandas full of plants. The house, though simple, is kept clean and tidy by Maria. It symbolizes the stability that Maria tirelessly seeks. They have two children, Ana, 10, and Lucas, 7, who attend the local school. The family constantly faces financial difficulties. Maria and João's salaries barely cover the monthly expenses, and there are months when they must choose between paying basic utility bills or buying food. Debts accumulate, and they frequently receive collection letters and phone calls from creditors. João has a habit of spending the little money left from his salary on lottery tickets, firmly believing that their fortune will change one day. The lottery tickets represent his uncertain dreams and hope for a sudden change. Maria, on the other hand, is more practical and worries about the family's stability, which makes her work overtime whenever possible. Maria recalls a conversation with her mother when she was a teenager. Her mother, a strong and determined woman, always said, "Maria, life is hard, but never stop fighting. Family is everything." These words echoed in Maria's mind whenever she felt overwhelmed. She knew her mother had gone through similar hardships and found strength in her memory. Maria's day starts early, before sunrise. She prepares breakfast for the family, gets the children ready for school, and organizes the house before leaving for work. At her job, Maria takes care of all household tasks, from cleaning to preparing meals for her employers. Sometimes, she also does small repairs and tends to the garden. Her work is exhausting, but Maria does it with a smile on her face, always striving for excellence. João leaves for work shortly after Maria, taking a crowded bus to the factory. His work is physically demanding, and he often returns home exhausted. In the evenings, after a tiring day, the family gathers for a simple dinner. During these meals, João often mentions his dreams of winning the lottery, while Maria listens in silence, trying not to show her skepticism. "João, you know, Maria, I feel our luck is going to change. We just need a little faith. The lottery could be our way out." Maria, with a tense smile, "João, I understand your desire, but we need to be realistic. Every penny counts. We need to think about the children's future." Maria and João's relationship is marked by a love that began in their youth and has survived many difficulties. However, financial pressures and frustrated expectations have started to create cracks in their union. João, frustrated with their situation, sometimes takes out his anger and disappointment on Maria, who, in turn, feels overwhelmed and undervalued. Maria begins to feel that she carries most of the financial and emotional burden of the family, while João clings to the illusion that luck will solve all their problems. Arguments about money become frequent, with Maria arguing for the need to save and João insisting on continuing to buy lottery tickets. This difference in priorities creates an emotional distance between them. Maria, "João, we can't go on like this. Every lottery ticket is a risk we can't afford. We need to think about the kids." João, frustrated, "You never understand, Maria. I just want a little hope, a chance to change our lives." It was a typical Saturday morning, and Maria was enjoying her day off. João had left early to run some errands, leaving Maria and the children alone at home. Taking advantage of the rare moment of tranquility, Maria decided to do a thorough cleaning of the house. While cleaning the living room shelf, she found a bunch of crumpled papers. Among them was a lottery ticket that João had bought the previous week. Curious and without much hope, Maria decided to check the numbers on the lottery website. She sat at the kitchen table, took out her phone, and slowly typed in the numbers. When she finished comparing, she felt her heart stop for a moment. She took a deep breath, checked again, and the numbers matched perfectly. She had the winning ticket in her hands. At first, Maria couldn't believe it. Her eyes filled with tears as the magnitude of what was happening began to register in her mind. Trembling, she looked at the ticket and the phone screen repeatedly, afraid it was a mistake. But it wasn't. She had indeed won the lottery. The initial emotion was a mix of shock, disbelief, and overwhelming joy. Maria got up from the chair and started pacing the kitchen, still holding the ticket. Her heart was racing, her hands were sweating, and she felt a wave of heat throughout her body. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she tried to process what it meant to be a millionaire overnight. Maria was overcome by a whirlwind of emotions. Euphoria, excitement, and a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. She wanted to scream with joy, but held back, afraid the children would wake up and start asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. As the initial euphoria began to subside, Maria sat down again, this time on the living room couch, still holding the ticket tightly. Her thoughts started racing, imagining all the possibilities the prize could bring to her and her family's lives. First, she thought of her children. Anna and Lucas could have a quality education, attend good schools and universities, and would not have to go through the hardships she and João faced. Maria imagined herself buying a new, spacious, and comfortable house, where each child would have their own room, a garden to play in, and a safe and welcoming environment. Then, she thought of her own life. She could finally quit her job as a domestic worker, a job that, despite her dedication, was tiring and often undervalued. With the prize money, she could fulfill her dreams and live a more peaceful life. She could travel, visit places she only saw on TV, buy nice clothes, dine at restaurants, and live in comfort and dignity. Maria also thought of her family and friends. She could help her parents, who still lived in a precarious house, and her siblings, who also struggled to survive. She could make donations to charities and help those in worse situations than hers. But amidst all these reflections, a concern began to arise. How to tell João? They had had many arguments about money and, more recently, about the lottery. João was always obsessed with the idea of winning, and Maria knew he might want to control the prize, making impulsive decisions. She feared that the money, instead of bringing happiness, could end up bringing more conflicts. Maria began to consider the possibility of hiding the ticket from João. Maybe she could find a way to ensure the money was used wisely without him knowing immediately. This idea led her to a whirlwind of emotions and reflections about trust and love in her marriage. Looking out the window, Maria knew she was about to make the most important decision of her life. The lottery ticket was not just a piece of paper. It was a key to a new future, a chance to change everything. She just needed to decide how to use it and how to deal with the consequences this decision would bring to her life and her relationship with João. After discovering the winning ticket, Maria spent days pondering her situation. The recent arguments with João about money and his insistence on spending on unplanned lotteries had worn down the trust she had in her husband. Maria knew that if she told João about the prize, he might insist on making impulsive decisions and risking everything. Maria began to recall all the times she had had to be the voice of reason, balancing the family finances and sacrificing herself to ensure basic needs were met. She reflected on the number of times João ignored her concerns and continued to spend money on lottery tickets, leaving the burden of saving and managing the budget entirely on her shoulders. Every time she looked at João, she felt a pang of guilt, as if she were betraying not only him but also herself. "I am destroying what we built together," she thought. "Am I doing the right thing? What if João finds out? What if the money doesn't bring the happiness I hope for?" These memories reinforced her decision not to share the prize with him. She believed that to ensure her children's future and the family's financial security, she needed to take control of the situation. Maria decided that the best way to do this was to separate from João and keep the prize a secret. Maria began to develop a meticulous plan to hide the winning ticket and prepare for the divorce. First, she needed to find a safe place to store the ticket. She decided to hide it in an unlikely spot, inside an old recipe book at the back of a kitchen shelf, knowing that João rarely showed interest in that corner of the house. To prepare for the divorce, Maria consulted a lawyer specializing in family cases and confided in her situation. She explained to the lawyer about the lottery ticket and her desire to protect the prize to ensure a secure future for her children. The lawyer advised Maria to open a separate bank account into which she would transfer small amounts of money over the coming months, building an emergency fund. Maria also began gathering important documents, such as the children's birth certificates, school records, and information about the house and family accounts. She knew she would need all these documents during the divorce process. With the plan in mind, Maria began to act cautiously. She ensured all her actions were discreet to avoid raising suspicion. She continued her daily routine, working as a domestic worker and taking care of the house, while executing her plan in secret. Interactions with João during this period became more tense and cautious. Maria made a conscious effort not to let her anxiety show. She kept conversations superficial and avoided discussions about money or the lottery. When João mentioned his dreams of winning the lottery, Maria just nodded and quickly changed the subject. João, for his part, noticed a change in Maria. She seemed more distant, less willing to argue or discuss. He attributed this change to fatigue and work stress, without suspecting her true intentions. As months passed, Maria followed the lawyer's advice and transferred small amounts of money to her new bank account. She also began preparing her children for the possibility of a move, without going into details, simply saying that they might move to a better place soon. The day of the divorce was approaching, and Maria was ready to face this new stage of her life. She felt confident in her decision, convinced that she was doing the best to protect her family and ensure a better future for her children. The weight of the secret was still heavy, but the prospect of freedom and financial security kept her firm in her resolution. On the day scheduled for signing the divorce papers, Maria remained calm. She met João at the lawyer's office, and they both signed the documents that officially ended their marriage. João was confused and hurt, but Maria stood firm, knowing she was one step closer to securing a better future for her family. With the divorce finalized, Maria was ready to claim her prize and start a new life. However, she didn't yet know that an unexpected twist was about to change everything. Maria knew she needed to act with precision and discretion. After consulting with the lawyer, she initiated divorce proceedings on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. The lawyer suggested that Maria file for a consensual divorce to speed up the process and avoid prolonging emotional suffering and financial disputes. Maria then began to prepare João for the idea of divorce. One quiet evening, after the children had gone to sleep, she broached the subject calmly. She explained to João that she felt their marriage was no longer working, that the constant fights and differences of opinion were harming the family's harmony. She said she believed it was better for both of them to go their separate ways so they could find happiness individually. João was shocked and initially resisted the idea. He tried to argue that they could work out their problems and that divorce was not the solution. Maria remained firm, reiterating that this was the best decision for everyone. She used the strategy of avoiding blame and maintaining a conciliatory tone to convince João to accept the divorce without much resistance. The lawyer advised Maria to present a property division proposal that was fair and balanced, but also advantageous for her. Maria agreed to leave the house to João, knowing that with the lottery prize, she could buy a new home for herself and the children. She also proposed a reasonable child support payment, ensuring that João still felt responsible and involved in their lives. To expedite the process, Maria and the lawyer prepared all the necessary documents in advance, including the divorce petition, the property division proposal, and the child custody agreement. They scheduled a meeting with João and his lawyer, where they presented Maria's proposal. Maria's lawyer emphasized the importance of resolving everything amicably and quickly to avoid additional costs and emotional suffering. Despite Maria's efforts to keep everything calm and conciliatory, tensions began to arise. João, still resentful and confused, suspected there was more behind Maria's sudden decision. He questioned her true intentions and, on some occasions, accused her of hiding something. The arguments, which Maria tried to avoid, became inevitable. João, frustrated, began to reject some of Maria's proposals, insisting on reviewing certain terms of the agreement. He wanted to ensure he wasn't being deceived and that his share of the property and rights was being respected. The fights affected the family environment. The children, though kept out of the arguments, sensed the tension between their parents. Maria tried to protect Ana and Lucas from the emotional consequences, but felt increasingly exhausted by the situation. At home, the atmosphere became colder and more distant, with Maria and João avoiding prolonged conversations. From João's perspective, the divorce seemed to come out of nowhere. He couldn't understand why Maria was so determined to separate, especially after so many years together, facing hardships side by side. For João, the arguments about money and the lottery were normal in any marriage facing financial problems. He didn't realize the depth of the emotional weariness Maria was feeling. João started to suspect Maria was having an affair or had found someone with better financial conditions. This thought made him furious and bitter. He began to monitor Maria's movements more closely, looking for signs of betrayal or lies. Every time Maria left to meet the lawyer, João felt a pang of suspicion. João's reluctance to accept the divorce terms quickly turned into active resistance. He contested every point of the agreement, demanding more time to reflect and consult his lawyer. João's growing distrust made negotiations difficult, extending the process longer than Maria had planned. In his view, the divorce seemed like a personal betrayal and an attempt by Maria to shirk her marital and financial responsibilities. Without knowing about the winning ticket, he saw her actions as inexplicable and selfish. While Maria tried to stay calm and stick to her plan, João became increasingly suspicious and combative, creating an environment of constant tension and conflict. This tumultuous period was a test of Maria's determination, as she needed to keep the ticket secret while navigating the turbulent waters of divorce. The day of signing the divorce papers arrived with a mix of intense emotions for Maria. When she woke up, she felt a blend of relief and anxiety. This was the day she had been planning and waiting for with meticulous patience. She knew that by the end of this day, she would be closer to securing a safe future for her children and herself. As she prepared breakfast for the children, Maria tried to stay calm and maintain a normal routine. However, inside, a whirlwind of thoughts haunted her. She reflected on all the years she had spent with João, the good moments they shared, and the difficulties they faced together. The feeling of sadness was inevitable, but she knew this decision was necessary to protect her family. Looking at herself in the mirror before leaving, Maria saw a determined and courageous woman in her reflection. She took a deep breath, repeating to herself that she was doing the right thing. As she dropped the children off at school, she felt a pang in her heart, but also a sense of accomplishment. She was one step away from changing their lives forever. Maria arrived at the lawyer's office a little early, wanting to have a moment to compose herself before meeting João. The lawyer greeted her with an encouraging smile and assured her that everything was ready for the final signing. They sat in a small, well-lit meeting room where the documents were already laid out on the table. As she waited for João, Maria mentally reviewed all the steps that had brought her here. She remembered the sleepless nights, the tense arguments, and her unwavering determination to move forward. Each obstacle faced made her feel stronger and more resolute. She knew this was a decisive milestone in her life. João arrived a few minutes later with a serious and closed expression. There was palpable tension in the air as he sat down next to Maria without saying a word. The lawyer initiated the meeting by explaining the final details of the divorce agreement, and asking both to review the documents one last time. Maria felt a chill in her stomach as she picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath and signed the papers, each stroke of the pen a step towards her freedom. João, although reluctant, also signed the documents, his expression alternating between frustration and resignation. With the papers signed, the lawyer officially declared the divorce process closed. Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She stood up, thanked the lawyer, and left the room without looking back. João stayed a moment longer, talking with his lawyer, before also leaving. As she left the office, Maria was enveloped by a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in a long time. The sun was shining in the sky, and she took a deep breath, enjoying the fresh air. She felt lighter, as if she could finally start living the life she had always dreamed of. She knew there was still a long way to go, especially with claiming the lottery prize, but she was ready to face any challenge. On her way home, Maria reflected on her future. She allowed herself to dream of the new opportunities that had opened up before her. She thought about buying a new house for her and the children, ensuring they had a quality education, and even fulfilling some personal dreams that had always been set aside. The feeling of relief was accompanied by a renewed sense of purpose. Maria knew she had made the right choice, despite the pain and difficulties. She was ready to start over, stronger and more determined than ever. And with the winning ticket still well hidden, she felt prepared to take the next step in her journey towards a bright and secure future. The morning after the finalization of the divorce, Maria woke up early with a mix of excitement and nerves. Today would be the day she finally claimed the lottery prize. She had spent the night almost sleepless, planning how she would use the money to transform her family's life. She dressed carefully, choosing simple yet neat clothes, and tucked the winning ticket deep into her purse. Before leaving home, Maria checked the ticket one more time, making sure everything was in order. With a last look in the mirror, she smiled at herself, remembering the hardships she had overcome to get here. She left the house and took a taxi to the city center, where the lottery office was located. During the ride, Maria looked out the window, imagining all the changes the money would bring. She felt empowered, confident she had made the right decisions. She arrived at the imposing building and took a deep breath before entering. She was about to embark on a new life. Maria was greeted by a smiling receptionist who guided her to a waiting room. The environment was elegant, with comfortable sofas and modern decor. She observed the people around her, each with their own dreams and hopes. A few minutes later, a lottery official called her and led her to a private room where she would hand over the ticket and finalize the procedures to receive the prize. Sitting at the table with the official, Maria felt a chill in her stomach. She handed over the ticket with an anxious smile. The official began verifying the numbers and documents while Maria watched every move, waiting for confirmation. The official typed the numbers into the system, checked them several times, and then frowned. Maria noticed the change in his expression and felt a shiver. He looked at her with a mix of surprise and embarrassment. "Mrs. Maria, there is a problem," the official said hesitantly. "The winning ticket is registered in the name of João da Silva." Maria felt as if the ground had collapsed beneath her feet. Her mind went blank for a few seconds as she tried to process the information. "What do you mean, in João's name?" she asked, incredulous. The official explained that when buying the ticket, João had registered his personal details, including his social security number, to prevent fraud. Maria had never known this detail and now realized the crucial mistake she had made by not verifying it before planning everything. The revelation hit Maria like a bucket of cold water. Her heart raced, and she felt her hands start to tremble. Tears of despair welled up in her eyes as she tried to maintain composure. "This can't be happening," she murmured to herself, her voice trembling. I planned everything." The official tried to console her, explaining that, legally, the prize belonged to João. Maria felt a mix of anger and helplessness. All the effort, the courage to face the divorce, everything seemed in vain. She began to question every decision she had made, realizing that the plan she had so carefully crafted had a fatal flaw. The reality of her situation hit her hard. The idea of telling João about the prize, especially after the divorce, seemed like a nightmare. Maria knew he would never understand her intentions and that all trust between them was broken. She was caught in a dilemma: face João and deal with the consequences of her actions, or accept the loss of the prize and continue her life modestly. Maria stood up from the chair, still in shock, and thanked the official for the explanation. She left the lottery office with unsteady steps, feeling empty and defeated. The way back home was a haze of confused and painful emotions. Once home, she sat in the kitchen and let the tears fall freely, realizing that despite all her planning, fate had played a cruel trick on her. She knew she needed to find a way to move forward, but at that moment, all she could do was cry for the lost dream and the harsh lesson she had learned about trust, secrets, and the price of impulsive decisions. Maria returned home in a state of deep desolation. The discovery that the ticket was in João's name shattered all her hopes and plans. Sitting at the kitchen table, she couldn't stop thinking about the crucial mistake she had made. The feeling of defeat was overwhelming. The first immediate consequence was the emotional impact. Maria felt a wave of regret and shame. The decision to hide the prize and divorce João now seemed like an imprudent and selfish move. Every detail of the plan she had so carefully devised now turned into a painful reminder of her failure. The following days were filled with a whirlwind of emotions. Maria struggled to carry out her daily tasks, and communication with her children became more difficult. She dreaded the inevitable moment when she would have to tell João the truth. She felt trapped in a maze of her own choices, unsure how to find a way out. Finally, Maria gathered the courage to face João. She chose an evening when the children were at a friend's house, ensuring they would be away from any potential conflict. When João came home, Maria called him to the kitchen and began to speak. "Maria," with a trembling voice, "João, we need to talk. It's something very important." João, with suspicion, "What is it, Maria? Why such a serious tone?" Maria took a deep breath and began to tell everything. The discovery of the winning ticket, her plan to hide it, and the decision to divorce him to ensure a secure future for herself and the children. João's reaction was a mix of shock, anger, and sadness. He was silent for a moment, processing Maria's confession. Then, with a voice full of resentment, he asked, "You really thought you could deceive me like that? I can't believe you did this, Maria." Maria tried to explain her reasons, but João was inconsolable. The betrayal he felt was deep, not just for the attempt to deceive him, but for the breach of trust in their marriage. He abruptly stood up, slamming the kitchen door, and left the house, leaving Maria alone with her tears and regrets. In the days that followed, Maria reflected deeply on her actions and their consequences. She realized that greed and fear had led her to make impulsive and selfish decisions. The desire to ensure financial stability for her family had blinded her to the most important values: trust and honesty. Maria understood that by trying to protect her children and herself, she had compromised the integrity of her marriage and deeply hurt the person she loved most. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, and she now faced the harsh reality of living with the consequences of her choices. Initially consumed by anger, João began to understand the pressure and despair Maria felt. How could she do this to me? Was all our love just an illusion? The revelation of the prize and her plan forced him to confront his own failures, especially his obsession with the lottery and the lack of communication and partnership in their marriage. The experience brought valuable lessons for both. Maria learned that greed could destroy relationships and that true security comes from mutual trust and emotional support. João realized that his actions and priorities had also contributed to the crisis in their marriage. Despite the pain, they both began working on rebuilding their lives. Maria committed to being more transparent and open, while João made an effort to be more present and responsible. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were willing to try. for themselves and their children. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support is essential to us. And now, an exciting new story is coming up on your screen.